Before we dive into tonight's story, if you're enjoying these accounts from law enforcement across America, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us bring you more of these unsettling true stories. And I'm always curious, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's begin. My name is Daniel Hayes, and before that night when everything turned upside down, I served as a Wyoming State Trooper for over 6 years. The story I'm about to tell takes place in October 1992 on Interstate 80, which runs parallel to Wyoming's vast high desert. If you've never driven on the I-80 highway through Wyoming, let me tell you, it's one of the most desolate highways you'll ever see in America. Miles of sagebrush, wind-carved rock formations, and a sky so vast you feel like a bug crawling on the bottom of the world. I was 28 years old, married to my high school sweetheart Lisa, and we had a 3-year-old daughter named Amy. I'd taken the state trooper job because it was steady work with good benefits, and in a state with more antelope than people, opportunities were limited. The pay wasn't great, but I got to spend my days driving through some of the most beautiful, desolate country on earth, and most nights I made it home for dinner. Most nights. October 15th, 1992. Started like any other shift. I clocked in at the Rollins station at 3 p.m., did my equipment check, and headed out onto I-80 westbound. My patrol sector covered a 100-mile stretch between Rollins and Rock Springs, a route I'd driven hundreds of times. The weather was crisp and clear, temperature dropping as the sun started its descent toward the horizon. Perfect autumn day in Wyoming, the kind that made you forget how brutal the winters could be. I spent the first few hours of my shift handling the usual business. Pulled over a semi for a broken taillight, helped a family from Connecticut with a flat tire, ran radar on speeders coming down from the pass. By 10 p.m., traffic had thinned to almost nothing. That was normal for a Tuesday night in October. The only people on I-80 at that hour were long-haul truckers and the occasional tourist who'd miscalculated their driving time. Around 11 p.m., I decided to stop at the Little America rest area for coffee and to stretch my legs. Little America was one of the larger rest stops on I-80, a sprawling complex with gas station, convenience store, restaurant, and a motel. But the main rest area, the public facilities where truckers and travelers could park and sleep, was separate from the commercial area. That's where I was headed. I pulled off at mile marker 68 and followed the ramp to the rest area parking lot. Even from a distance, I could see something was off. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just 3 semi-trucks lined up in the commercial vehicle section and 2 passenger cars in the regular parking. That wasn't unusual for this time of night. What was unusual were the lights. The rest area had 4 entrance doors, 2 on each side of the main building. Standard design for most highway rest stops, but tonight, each door was lit differently. The first door on the left glowed with warm, yellowish light, the kind you'd get from old incandescent bulbs. The second door had the bluish-white fluorescence of modern lighting. The third door, on the right side, had that greenish tint of old mercury vapor lamps. And the fourth door seemed to flicker with an LED quality that was too bright, too white, almost clinical. I sat in my patrol car for a moment, staring at those 4 doors, trying to figure out what maintenance issue would cause such a lighting discrepancy. Maybe they were replacing bulbs section by section, but why would they use 4 completely different types? I grabbed my flashlight and got out, the cold night air hitting me immediately. Wyoming in October could drop 30 degrees after sunset, and tonight was no exception. My breath came out in visible puffs as I walked toward the building, boots crunching on the gravel parking lot. As I got closer to the first door, the one with the yellow light, I noticed something else strange. Through the glass, I could see the interior of the rest area, but it looked wrong. The walls were painted a different color, a pale green instead of the beige I remembered. The trash cans were old metal ones, not the modern plastic receptacles, and the vending machines visible through the glass looked vintage, with rounded corners and chrome trim. I reached for the door handle and paused. Something felt wrong, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck that every cop learns to pay attention to. But I pushed through it and pulled the door open. The smell hit me first. Cigarette smoke, strong and fresh, even though smoking had been banned in public facilities for years. And underneath that, the scent of old coffee and something else, something like mothballs and aged paper. I stepped inside, and my boots hit linoleum that was definitely not the tile floor I remembered. The interior was lit by those warm yellow bulbs, hanging in frosted glass fixtures that looked like something from the 1950s. The walls were that pale green I'd seen through the window, and the informational posters on the walls were old, really old, with typography and graphic design that screamed mid-century America. A woman was standing at the sink in the ladies' room area, visible through the open doorway. She wore a dress with a full skirt, cinched waist, and a small hat perched on carefully styled hair. She was washing her hands, and when she looked up and saw me in the mirror, she screamed. I immediately held up my hands. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm a state trooper, just doing a routine check." But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking through me, her eyes wide with terror, backing away from the mirror like she'd seen a ghost. She ran past me, right through the space where I was standing, and I felt a cold sensation as she passed. Not like being physically brushed by someone, but like walking through a cold spot in a room. She hit the door at a run and disappeared outside. I stood there, confused, and looked down at myself. My uniform looked strange in this lighting, the colors slightly off. I walked to the mirror and saw my reflection, but it was faint, translucent, like looking at myself through fogged glass. My radio crackled. "Unit 34, what's your 20? I grabbed the radio from my belt. "This is 34. I'm at Little America Rest Area, mile marker 68. Dispatch, I've got a situation here. Need you to run the security footage for this location." "Copy that, 34. What kind of situation?" I looked around the vintage rest area, at the old fixtures and period details that shouldn't exist in 1992. "I'm not sure yet. Just pull the footage and have it ready for review." "Will do." "Everything okay there?" "Yeah, I think so. I'll check back in shortly." I walked back toward the entrance, but instead of going outside, I moved to the second door, the one with the modern fluorescent lighting. Through the glass, I could see a completely different interior. Contemporary tile floors, updated fixtures, the beige walls I remembered. This was the rest area as it should be. I opened the second door and stepped through. Immediately, the atmosphere changed. The air was cooler, cleaner, with that antiseptic smell of industrial cleaning supplies. The cigarette smoke was gone. The vintage fixtures were gone. This was 1992, the present, my present. But when I looked back through the door I'd just come from, I could still see that yellow-lit vintage interior. It hadn't changed. It was still there, still 1950-something, existing simultaneously with the modern rest area I was standing in. I walked to the third door and looked through the glass. The interior beyond was different again. The walls were wood-paneled, the lighting had that greenish mercury vapor quality, and I could see shag carpet in some areas. The design screamed 1970s, complete with orange and brown color schemes and geometric patterns. Through the glass of the fourth door, I saw an interior that looked too modern, too advanced even for 1992. LED lighting, digital displays, sleek minimalist design. And people, I could see people moving inside, but they were dressed in clothes that looked futuristic, carrying devices I didn't recognize. 4 doors. 4 completely different time periods, all existing in the same building, at the same rest area in the same moment. I keyed my radio again. "Dispatch, I need backup at Little America. And contact maintenance. Find out if there's any construction or renovation going on here." Negative on construction 34. That rest area is scheduled for updates next year, but nothing's happening currently. What's going on? I watched a man walk past the 4th door's window, talking into a flat, rectangular device he held to his ear. Not a cell phone, at least not like any cell phone I'd seen. Too thin, too sleek. I'm not sure. Just send backup. Copy. Nearest unit is about 40 minutes out. Can you advise on the nature of the emergency? No emergency. Just need another set of eyes on something. I walked back to the 2nd door, the 1992 present, and went inside. The rest area was quiet, empty. I checked the restrooms, the vending machine area, the trucker's lounge. Nobody. The 3 semis in the parking lot were dark. Drivers probably asleep in their cabs. I went back outside and circled the building. From the exterior, it looked completely normal. A standard rest area, single-story, brick and concrete construction. Nothing unusual. But those 4 doors still glowed with their different lights, 4 portals to 4 different times. I tried the 3rd door, the 1970s one. The handle felt normal, solid, real. I pulled it open and stepped into wood-paneled warmth and the smell of burnt coffee and stale cigarette smoke. A radio somewhere was playing country music, the twangy kind that had been popular decades ago. I could hear voices, male voices, laughing and talking. Following the sound, I walked into the trucker's lounge area. 3 men sat around a table, playing cards. They wore bell-bottom jeans, long hair, thick sideburns. They were smoking, filling the room with blue haze. One of them looked up as I entered. "Hey, officer, come to bust up our game?" He grinned, showing a gap between his front teeth. "No, sir. Just checking the facility." "You gentlemen have a good night." But he was already looking past me, his expression changing from friendly to confused. "Hey, what kind of uniform is that? You with Highway Patrol or what?" I looked down at my uniform. In this light, with these surroundings, it did look out of place. Too modern. The wrong shade of tan. The wrong style of badge. "Wyoming State Trooper," I said, touching my badge. "Is there a problem?" "State Trooper?" The man laughed. "Since when? Wyoming Highway Patrol, you mean?" I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The Wyoming Highway Patrol had been reorganized into the State Trooper Division in 1987. This man didn't know that because, in his time, it hadn't happened yet. "What's today's date?" I asked. "October 15th. Why? What year?" The 3 men exchanged glances. "You feeling all right, officer?" It's 1972, 20 years before my present. I was standing in a rest area in 1972 talking to truck drivers who had no idea they were interacting with someone from 2 decades in their future. "I'm fine," I managed. "You gentlemen have a good night." I backed toward the door, their confused stares following me. As I reached for the handle, one of them called out, "Hey, officer, you hear about that woman they found?" "Over in the women's restroom?" I stopped. "What woman?" "Dead. Someone killed her. Highway Patrol has been here all evening, but they just cleared out about an hour ago. Damn shame. Pretty young thing, from what I heard." "When did this happen?" "Earlier tonight, maybe around 10 p.m.? We pulled in around 11, and the cops were still processing the scene." I felt my stomach drop. Did they identify her? "Yeah, Sarah something. Sarah Mitchell, I think they said. Traveling alone, stopped to use the facilities." Wrong place, wrong time. Sarah Mitchell. The name meant nothing to me, but a murder at a rest area was serious. If this had happened in 1972, there would be records, case files. But I'd never heard of a murder at Little America. No unsolved cases, no cold files, nothing. Did they catch who did it? The gap-toothed trucker shook his head. Not yet. Sick bastard, probably long gone by now. Highway goes 2 directions, could be anywhere. I thanked them and stepped back through the door into the cold October night of 1992. Or was it 1992? I was starting to lose track of which reality was real, which time period I actually belonged to. I pulled out my notebook and wrote down the name. Sarah Mitchell, murdered. October 15th, 1972. Then I tried the first door again, the 1950s one. This time, I was ready for the vintage aesthetic, the yellow lights, the old fixtures. The rest area was quiet, but I could see someone sitting on a bench near the vending machines. A woman, maybe 40, wearing a traveling suit and gloves. She was crying. "Ma'am? Are you all right?" She looked up, startled, and I saw the same thing happen that had happened with the woman at the sink. Her eyes went wide, not quite seeing me, looking through me like I was a ghost. "Can you see me?" I asked. She nodded slowly, uncertain. "Are you real?" "I think so. Are you?" "I don't know anymore." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I saw something in the restroom. A woman. She couldn't finish, just shook her head. A woman was what? "Dead. She's dead. In the restroom. I just found her." I felt ice in my veins. "Show me." She led me to the women's restroom, and there, collapsed on the floor between 2 stalls, was the body of a young woman. Maybe 25, blonde hair, wearing a modest dress and sensible shoes. There was blood, not much, just a small amount around what looked like a single puncture wound to her neck. I immediately keyed my radio, but got only static. I tried again. Nothing. Whatever was happening with these doors, these time periods, my radio couldn't reach through them. I knelt beside the body, checking for a pulse I knew I wouldn't find. Her skin was still warm, the blood still wet. This had happened recently, within the last hour. "Did you see anyone?" "Anyone leaving the restroom or in the parking lot?" The woman shook her head. "I just pulled in 10 minutes ago. She was already here, already dead. I was going to go find help, but then I saw you. What's your name?" "Eleanor Grant." "I'm driving from Chicago to Sacramento." Stopped to use the facilities and freshen up. She looked at me more carefully. "You're not dressed like any policeman I've ever seen." "I'm from the future," I said, the words sounding insane even as I spoke them. "This is going to sound crazy, but what year is it?" "September 15th, 1952. 3 murders. 3 different time periods. 1952, 1972, 1992. All at the same rest area. All on October 15th. All around the same time. Late evening, early night." "Listen carefully," I told Eleanor. "I need you to go outside and find a highway patrolman. Tell them there's been a murder. Can you do that?" She nodded, still looking uncertain about my strange uniform and even stranger questions. But she went. I stood there in the 1952 rest area looking down at a murder victim who had been dead for 40 years in my time, but was freshly killed in hers. And I was starting to see a pattern, one that terrified me. I went back outside to the 1992 present and checked the 4th door, the futuristic one. Through the glass, I could see an interior that was all clean lines and modern technology. Digital displays on the walls showed weather and traffic information. People moved through the space, but they looked slightly off. slightly translucent, like they weren't quite there. I opened the door and stepped into what I assumed was the future. The temperature was controlled, comfortable. Everything smelled clean, almost sterile. The people I'd seen through the glass were more solid now, but they still had an ethereal quality. One of them, an elderly man, was sitting on a bench near the entrance, looking distressed. "Excuse me, sir, are you all right?" He looked up at me with watery blue eyes. "Officer, thank God. There's been an accident, or maybe not an accident, in the parking lot. You need to come quick." "What happened?" "There's a man in one of those new electric cars. He's just sitting there, not moving. I think he might be dead. 4 murders, 4 time periods. The pattern was complete. I followed the old man outside, but the parking lot I stepped into wasn't the empty lot of my 1992 Present. This lot had cars I'd never seen before, sleek and strange, some without visible exhaust pipes. Electric cars, the old man had said. The lighting was different too, bright and white from LED fixtures. In one of the parking spaces sat a silver vehicle with a distinctive T logo on the front. Through the window, I could see a man slumped over the steering wheel. The old man hung back while I approached and opened the driver's door. The man was dead, no question. Same type of wound I'd seen on the other victims. A single precise puncture to the neck. Minimal blood. He was wearing clothes that looked modern but slightly off. Styles I didn't quite recognize. And on the dashboard, reflecting the LED parking lot lights, was a small object. I picked it up carefully. A penny, an old penny, weathered and worn. I checked the date, 1952. My hands started shaking. A 1952 penny, in what appeared to be the year 2012 or beyond, left on the body of a murder victim. Just like, I would bet, there were 1952 pennies left on the bodies of the victims in 1972 and 1992. "Sir," I called to the elderly man, "what's today's date?" "October 15th, 2012, every 20 years. October 15th, 1952, 1972, 1992, 2012. 4 murders spanning 60 years, all at the same location, all on the same date, all at approximately the same time of night. And whoever was doing this had access to all 4 time periods, could move between them the same way I was moving between them now, through those 4 doors. I looked back at the rest area building, at those 4 glowing doors, each one a portal to a different time. Something about this place, this specific location, allowed those doors to exist. Allowed someone to cross through time and kill with impunity. My radio crackled, startling me. "Unit 34, do you copy?" I grabbed it. "This is 34, I copy. Your backup is about 20 minutes out. What's your status?" I looked around the 2012 parking lot, then back at the 4 doors. "Dispatch, I need you to do something for me. Run a search for unsolved murders at Little America Rest Area. Any homicides, any year. Copy that. May take a few minutes. I'll wait." I walked back to the building, to my 1992 Present door, and went inside. The rest area was still empty, still quiet. I checked my watch, 11:47 p.m. The same time, approximately, that all 4 murders had occurred. My radio crackled again. "Unit 34 got those records you requested. We have 1 unsolved homicide on file. October 15th, 1972. Victim was Sarah Mitchell, age 26. Single puncture wound to the neck, minimal blood loss. No suspects, case went cold. Only 1. Dispatch only had records of the 1972 murder. The others hadn't been reported in my timeline, or had been lost to time, or hadn't happened yet, or existed in alternate realities I couldn't begin to understand. Copy that. Any other incidents at that location? Anything unusual? Negative. Clean record otherwise. Wait, there's a note in the file. The investigating officer reported some confusion about the crime scene. Something about multiple witnesses giving contradictory accounts of when they arrived, what they saw. Some witnesses claimed the interior of the rest area looked different than it did when crime scene investigators processed it. Chalked up to stress and confusion. Thanks, dispatch. 34 out. I sat down on one of the benches and tried to think. 4 time periods, 4 doors, 4 murders. Same date, same time, same method. A killer who could move through time, leaving 1952 pennies as a calling card. But why? What was the purpose? Was it the same killer, someone who had found a way to not age, to exist across decades? Or were there multiple killers, copycat crimes across time? And why this rest area? What made this location special? I looked up at the fluorescent lights, at the modern fixtures of 1992. Outside those 3 other doors, different versions of this moment were playing out. In 1952, Eleanor Grant was reporting the murder of the young blonde woman. In 1972, highway patrol officers had already processed the scene and left, their investigation ultimately going nowhere. In 2012, someone was about to discover the body in the electric car, and in 1992, I was the only one who could see all 4 crimes. I was the only one who knew the pattern. My backup would arrive soon. How could I explain this? How could I make anyone believe what I'd seen? I'd sound insane, a state trooper claiming he'd walked through time, seen murders in different decades, talked to people who'd been dead for years or weren't even born yet. But I had to try. Because if this was happening every 20 years, and if my math was right, the next occurrence would be October 15th, 2032. And someone needed to stop it before then. I stood up and walked to the first door, the 1952 entrance. Through the glass, I could see law enforcement officers now, men in vintage uniforms processing the crime scene. Eleanor Grant was sitting on a bench, talking to an officer, pointing toward the restroom. I tried the handle, but this time it wouldn't open. Locked, or maybe sealed. I couldn't cross back into 1952. The moment had passed, or the window had closed, or something had changed. I tried the third door, the 1972 entrance, also locked. The fourth door, 2012, same thing. Only the second door, my present, would open. I was being kept in my own time now. Whatever had allowed me to cross between periods had ended. The convergence, if that's what it was, had closed. But as I stood there looking through the glass at those other times, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In each time period, standing in the background watching the police activity, was the same man. Same face, same build, same dark coat. He looked exactly the same in 1952 as he did in 1972 and 1992 and 2012. He was in all 4 time periods, watching, waiting. And as I watched him through the glass of the 1952 door, he turned and looked directly at me, smiled, and pulled something from his pocket, holding it up so I could see. A penny, a 1952 penny. He'd known I would see him. He wanted me to see him. This wasn't just about the murders. This was about something bigger, something I didn't understand yet. My backup arrived, red and blue lights flashing in the parking lot. Officer Sarah Chen, a colleague I'd worked with several times, got out of her patrol car and walked toward me. "Hayes, what's going on? Dispatch said you needed backup at the rest area." I looked at her, then back at the 4 doors. In the normal light of 1992, they looked like regular doors. Nothing special. The different lighting I'd seen earlier was gone, or maybe I couldn't see it anymore now that the convergence had ended. "Sarah, have you ever heard of anything strange happening at this rest area? Any unusual reports, any legends or stories?" She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "It's a rest area, Hayes. What kind of strange are we talking about? Time anomalies. People seeing things from different eras. Anything like that. Have you been drinking? I'm serious." She studied me for a long moment. "You feeling okay?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." "4 ghosts," I muttered. "Listen, can you do me a favor? Run a check for me. Any unsolved murders at this location. Any time period. Not just in our system, but go back as far as the records go." "Hayes, please, just humor me." She sighed, but pulled out her radio and made the request. While we waited, I walked around the building one more time, checking each door. They all looked normal now. Identical lighting, identical appearance. Whatever had happened, whatever convergence had occurred, it was over for now. Sarah's radio crackled with a response. "We've got 2 hits, one from 1972, Sarah Mitchell, and one from 1952, victim's name was listed as Jane Doe, never identified. Both single puncture wounds to the neck, both October 15th. Sarah looked at me. "How did you know about these?" "I didn't." "Not until tonight." I pulled out my notebook and showed her the names I'd written down. The 1972 victim's name was Sarah Mitchell. The 1952 victim, I saw her but didn't get a name. But I'm betting when they processed that Jane Doe case, someone somewhere described her as young, blonde, wearing a modest dress. Sarah checked the file information coming through on her computer. "Yeah, that's the description. Hayes, what the hell is going on?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." I looked back at the rest area building, at those 4 innocuous doors. Somewhere, somewhen, a killer was moving through time, leaving bodies and 1952 pennies behind. And I was now the only person in 1992 who knew about it. The only person who could stop it from happening again in 2032. But first, I had to understand what this place was. Why here? Why this rest area? Why October 15th? And who was the man I'd seen in all 4 time periods? The man who didn't age. The man who smiled and held up that penny like it was all part of some grand joke. I had 20 years to find out. 20 years until the next convergence. I just hoped that would be enough time. Because as I stood there in the cold Wyoming night, I realized something that chilled me more than any October wind. The man with the penny hadn't just been watching the crime scenes. In the 2012 timeline, he'd been watching me, which meant he knew I'd seen him. He knew I'd figured out the pattern, and 20 years from now, when the doors opened again, he'd be waiting. I didn't sleep that night. After Sarah Chen and I finished processing the scene, after I'd written up a report that carefully omitted any mention of time travel or impossible doors, after I'd driven home in the pre-dawn darkness, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and tried to make sense of what I'd witnessed. Lisa found me there at 6 a.m., still in my uniform, surrounded by notes and sketches. "Danny? Did you even come to bed? Couldn't sleep? Had a weird night." She poured herself coffee and sat across from me, studying my face with the concerned expression I'd seen too many times over the past year. The expression that said she was worried about me, about the job, about what it was doing to me. "Want to talk about it?" I looked at my notes. 4 timelines, 4 murders, 1 killer. How could I explain that to someone who hadn't seen it? Just a case. Something doesn't add up. The murders at the rest stop? Sarah called me, said you seemed rattled. Sarah called you? She was worried. Said you were asking strange questions, talking about things from different time periods. Lisa reached across and took my hand. "Danny, if something's wrong, If you need to talk to someone, there's no shame in that. The department has counselors. I'm not having a breakdown. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Had I really walked through time, or had I experienced some kind of stress-induced hallucination? The only evidence I had was my own memory and the penny, the 1952 penny I'd taken from the 2012 crime scene. I pulled it from my pocket and placed it on the table. Lisa picked it up, examining it. "Where'd you get this?" "Evidence from the scene. Looks old. Collector's item, maybe?" She handed it back. "Danny, I'm serious. You haven't been yourself lately. Working too many night shifts, not sleeping enough. Maybe you should take some time off." Maybe, but I knew I wouldn't. Not when I had 20 years to figure this out before it happened again. Lisa got Amy ready for preschool while I showered and changed. I should have gone to bed, should have gotten at least a few hours of sleep, but my mind was racing. I needed answers, and I knew where to start. The Wyoming State Archives in Cheyenne held historical records going back to territorial days. If there were any documented cases of unusual activity at Little America, or if there was something significant about that location, the archives would have it. I called the station and told them I was taking a personal day. Then I made the 2-hour drive to Cheyenne, fighting exhaustion the whole way. The archives building was a squat concrete structure that looked like it had been built in the 1960s and hadn't been updated since. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and dust. A young woman at the front desk looked up from her book as I entered. "Can I help you?" I showed her my badge. "I'm researching a case. Need to look at historical records for a location on I-80, around mile marker 68. Anything dating back to before the interstate was built. That would be pre-1960s. Most of those records are still being digitized. You'll have to go through the physical files." She led me to a back room filled with filing cabinets and boxes. "What specifically are you looking for?" "Anything unusual. Disappearances, murders, strange incidents. Also, any information about what was at that location before the rest stop was built." She gave me a skeptical look but helped me pull the relevant boxes. I spent the next 4 hours going through dusty folders and yellowed newspaper clippings, piecing together a history of the location that predated Little America by decades. What I found made my skin crawl. Before the rest stop was built in 1950, the location had been an isolated trading post called Four Corners Station. The name came from its position at the intersection of 4 old wagon trails. According to an 1880s survey map, the site had been considered significant by local Native American tribes, though the records didn't specify why. A newspaper article from 1892 reported the disappearance of 3 travelers who had stopped at Four Corners Station. They'd been seen arriving but never seen leaving. Their horses and wagons were found abandoned, but the travelers themselves had vanished. In 1911, another disappearance. A family of 4, last seen stopping at the station. Gone without a trace. In 1932, 2 more people vanished from the location, which by then had become a small gas station and diner. The pattern was there, if you knew to look for it. Every 20 years, approximately, people disappeared from this location. But the really interesting part came from a journal entry I found in a box of miscellaneous documents. It was written by a highway surveyor in 1947, during the planning phase of the interstate system. October 15, 1947. While surveying the proposed route for the new highway, we camped near the old Four Corners site. The crew reported unusual phenomena during the night. Several men claimed to have seen lights and heard voices, though we were miles from the nearest town. Most disturbing was young Miller's account of seeing people in old-fashioned clothing walking through our camp, passing through our tents as if they weren't there. 3 different men on 3 different watches reported the same thing. Weather was clear, no storms or atmospheric conditions that might explain such visions. I've marked this location for the proposed rest area, as it's a natural stopping point, but I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right about this place. October 15th, 1947. 5 years before the first documented murder, but clearly something had been happening at that location even then. I made copies of everything relevant and drove back to Rawlins as the sun was setting. My mind was spinning with the implications. This wasn't just about 4 murders spread across 60 years. This was about a location that had been causing temporal anomalies for over a century, maybe longer. When I got home, Lisa was putting Amy to bed. I kissed my daughter goodnight and went to my study, spreading out all my notes and the copies from the archives. I created a timeline, marking every known incident at the location. 1892, 3 disappearances. 1911, 4 disappearances. 1932, 2 disappearances. 1947, temporal phenomena witnessed. 1952, murder, Jane Doe, blonde woman. 1972, murder, Sarah Mitchell. 1992, temporal convergence witnessed by me. The pattern wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. Something happened at that location every 20 years or so, always in October, usually on or around the 15th. And in the years where someone had actually documented what they'd seen, they described temporal anomalies. People from different time periods appearing, sounds and lights that shouldn't exist. The rest stop itself had been built in 1950, right on top of the old Four Corners site. Whether the builders knew about the location's history, I couldn't say, but they'd built 4 entrances, 2 on each side of the building. 4 doors. Had that been intentional? Had someone known what they were doing? I fell asleep at my desk and woke to Lisa shaking my shoulder. "Danny, you have a phone call. It's Sarah Chen. She says it's urgent." I stumbled to the phone, still half asleep. "Hayes, Daniel, you need to come to the station, now. We've got something you need to see." 20 minutes later, I was at the Rawlins station, following Sarah to the evidence room. She led me to a table where several items were laid out, all in evidence bags. These came from the 1972 Sarah Mitchell case. I pulled the evidence boxes this morning, after our conversation last night. She pointed to the first bag. "Found this in the victim's pocket." A note. I picked up the bag and read the note through the plastic. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "He doesn't age. He's been doing this for years. If you're reading this, you need to stop him." October 15th, 1992. That's when he'll strike again. Please believe me. The doors at Little America are real. My hands started shaking. She knew. She knew about 1992. That's not all. Sarah pointed to another evidence bag containing a penny. This was found at the scene. 1952 penny, just like you said. Did they ever identify the suspect in this case? No, but there's a witness statement that's interesting. She pulled out a yellowed report. A truck driver named Earl Thompson gave a statement. He said he saw a man in the rest area around the time of the murder. Described him as average height, dark coat, clean-cut appearance. But here's the weird part. Thompson said the man looked exactly like someone he'd seen years earlier, in 1952, at the same rest stop. Said he could never forget the face because the man had smiled at him in a way that made his skin crawl. Thompson was convinced it was the same man, but that would have made him impossibly old by 1972. I felt ice in my veins. Did Thompson describe anything else? Yeah, he said the man was carrying something, playing with it in his hands. A coin. Thompson specifically mentioned it was a penny, and it looked old. The same man, the same penny, confirmed now by multiple witnesses across multiple decades. Sarah, I need you to trust me on something. I know this sounds crazy, but I think we're dealing with someone who can move through time. Someone who's been killing at this location for at least 40 years, maybe longer. Sarah stared at me. Daniel, do you hear yourself? I know how it sounds, but look at the evidence. Same location, same date, same method, same calling card, same witness descriptions of a man who doesn't age. And that note, Sarah, the victim in 1972 knew about 1992. How could she know unless she'd somehow seen the future? People make predictions all the time. She was specific. October 15th, 1992. That's last night. And she mentioned the doors. I saw those doors, Sarah. I walked through them. I was in 1952, 1972, and 2012. I saw all 4 crime scenes. Sarah set down the evidence bag carefully. Daniel, I think you need to take that time off. Maybe see someone, talk through what you experienced. I'm not crazy. But my voice cracked as I said it, because part of me wondered if I was. My radio crackled. Dispatch, calling for all units. Be advised, we have a suspicious person report at Little America Rest Area, mile marker 68. Caller reports a man in dark clothing behaving strangely near the north entrance. All available units respond. Sarah and I looked at each other. That's impossible, she said. It's October 16th. Whatever convergence or phenomenon happened last night, it should be over. Unless it's not, I said, already heading for the door. Unless he's still there. We took separate vehicles, Sarah following me as I pushed my patrol car to 90 miles per hour down I-80. The sun was setting as we arrived, casting long shadows across the rest area parking lot. There were several cars parked, but no sign of anyone suspicious. We split up, Sarah taking the south side while I approached the north entrance. The 4 doors looked normal in the evening light. Nothing unusual about them. But as I got closer, I felt it. That same prickling sensation from the night before, that sense of wrongness. I pushed open the first door and stepped into the 1950s rest area. The yellow lights, the vintage fixtures, the smell of cigarettes and old coffee. Everything was exactly as it had been the night before. Hello? My voice echoed in the empty space. A figure emerged from the men's room. The man from all 4 timelines, the one I'd seen through the windows. Up close, he looked ordinary, almost forgettable. Average height, clean features, dark eyes. He wore a coat that could have been from any decade, timeless in its simplicity. Officer Hayes, he said, his voice calm and pleasant. I've been expecting you. I put my hand on my weapon. Who are you? Names don't matter much when you live as long as I have. But you can call me James. James Crowley, though that's not the name I was born with. You killed those women, all 4 of them. 5, actually. You haven't found the 2032 body yet. He smiled, and I understood what the truck driver meant about that smile being disturbing. It didn't reach his eyes. But that's cheating, I suppose, since from your perspective, it hasn't happened yet. How are you doing this? How are you moving through time? The same way you moved through time last night, officer. Through the doors. This place, this location, it's special. The indigenous peoples knew it, called it a thin place, where the veil between worlds was weak. When the rest stop was built, they unknowingly enhanced the effect. 4 doors, 4 cardinal directions, creating a perfect intersection of temporal energy. Temporal energy isn't real, isn't it? He gestured around us. You're standing in 1952. having a conversation with someone from 1992 about murders that span 60 years. I'd say temporal energy is very real. Why are you killing these people? His expression darkened. Because I'm trapped, Officer Hayes. I've been trapped here since October 15th, 1932. I was one of those disappearances your archives probably mention. Stopped at the old gas station and something happened. I fell through time, got caught between moments. The only way I can exist is by anchoring myself. And anchoring requires fuel. You're killing people to sustain yourself. Life for life, time for time. Each death gives me another 20 years. Without it, I slip further into the between, become less real, until I'm just an echo. Would you want that? To fade away, conscious but unable to interact with the world? I'd want to not be a murderer. He laughed. Morality is a luxury of people who exist in linear time, officer. You have no idea what it's like to be unstuck, to experience all moments simultaneously. The past, present, and future, all happening at once in your mind. It's maddening. So you've been killing one person every 20 years since 1932. Since 1892, actually. I wasn't the first to fall through. There was another, the one who taught me how to anchor. And before him, who knows? This place has been claiming people for centuries, I'd imagine. Sarah's voice came through my radio. Daniel, I'm on the south side, no sign of anyone suspicious. You find anything? I keyed the radio, keeping my eyes on Crowley. Yeah, I've got contact with a suspect, north entrance. I need backup. But when I looked up, Crowley was gone. The 1950s rest area shimmered and shifted, becoming the 1992 present. Sarah burst through the door, weapon drawn. Where is he? He was just here. The suspect, he was standing right there. Sarah looked around the empty rest area. Daniel, there's nobody here. He was here. We were talking. He told me his name, explained how he's doing this. Who were you talking to? James Crowley. He's the killer. He's been trapped in time since 1932. Sarah lowered her weapon slowly. Daniel, listen to yourself. You're saying you were talking to someone who's been alive since 1932 and doesn't age. Someone who kills people to maintain his existence across time. I know it sounds insane. It doesn't just sound insane, Daniel. It is insane. Her voice was gentle but firm. I think you need help. Real help. This case, this place, it's gotten into your head. Sarah, please. Check the other doors, the other time periods. He might still be there. She looked at me with pity. There are no other time periods, Daniel. There are just 4 doors to the same rest area. That's it. I ran to the other doors, trying each one. But they all opened to the same 1992 interior. The yellow lights of 1952 were gone. The wood paneling of 1972 was gone. The sleek modernity of 2012 was gone. Just 4 doors leading to the same space, the same time. The convergence was over. Whatever window had opened last night had closed. He's still here, I insisted. Somewhere. He can move between the times even when the doors aren't open. He's been doing it for decades. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. Danny, let's go back to the station. We'll file a report, and then you're going to take some time off. Real time off, and you're going to talk to someone. I let her lead me back to our patrol cars, but my mind was racing. Crowley was still out there. Still moving through time. Still planning the next murder, 20 years from now in 2012. And I was the only one who believed it. Over the next week, I was placed on administrative leave. Mandatory, pending a psychological evaluation. Lisa was supportive but worried. Amy didn't understand why Daddy was home so much, but she seemed to enjoy the extra time together. I used the time to dig deeper. I went back to the archives, looking for any mention of James Crowley. I found him in a 1932 newspaper article, "Local man missing after stop at Four Corners Station." There was a photograph. It was definitely the same man I'd seen in the rest area. I compiled everything into a report. The historical disappearances, the pattern of murders, the witness statements, the temporal anomalies. I laid it all out, creating a comprehensive case file that would prove I wasn't crazy. But when I showed it to the department psychologist, she just nodded sympathetically and asked me how I was sleeping. 2 weeks into my leave, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Officer Hayes?" An elderly voice, male, slightly shaky. "Yes? Who is this?" "My name is Earl Thompson. I was a truck driver back in the day. I gave a statement about a murder at Little America in 1972. I sat up straight. "Mr. Thompson, yes, I've read your statement. About the man who didn't age. I heard through the grapevine that you might be the only cop who believes what I saw, that you've seen him too. I have. I talked to him. He said his name was James Crowley." There was a long pause. I've been waiting 40 years for someone to take this seriously. I saw that man in 1952, when I was just a kid. My daddy stopped at Four Corners Station, and I saw him standing there, just watching people. Gave me the chills. Then in 1972, I saw him again. Exact same face, exact same age. I tried to tell the cops, but they thought I was confused or making it up. "You're not confused, Mr. Thompson." And I believe you. There's something else. Something I didn't put in my statement because I knew they'd think I was crazy. That night in 1972, after I gave my statement and left the rest stop, I was maybe 10 miles down the road when I had to stop. Engine trouble. While I was pulled over, a patrol car went by, heading toward Little America. But here's the thing, Officer Hayes. That patrol car was vintage, like something from the 1950s, and it was October 15th, 1972. Why would a 1950s patrol car be on I-80 in 1972? My mouth went dry. What time was this? Around midnight, maybe a little after. "Mr. Thompson, did you see the officer in that car? Did you see their face?" "Just a glimpse. Young guy, looked scared, but I remember thinking his uniform looked wrong, like it wasn't quite from either era." "Mr. Thompson, I need to ask you something. Have you ever heard of any officers going missing, maybe disappearing from the rest area?" "Not missing, no. But there was something. An officer named Mike Torres. He was investigating the 1972 murder. Sharp guy, took the case seriously. Then about a week after, he got hit by a car on I-80. Killed instantly. They said it was an accident, but I always wondered. He'd been asking questions about the rest area, about the history of the place. Mike Torres. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Mike Torres was my training officer, the man who'd recruited me to the force. According to the official records, he died in a hit-and-run in 1972, before I was even born. But what if that wasn't what really happened? What if Mike had figured out what was going on at Little America? What if he'd tried to stop it? "Mr. Thompson, thank you for calling. You've been incredibly helpful. Just promise me something, Officer Hayes. Whatever you do, be careful. That place, Little America, it's not right. And that man, Crowley, or whatever his name is, he's dangerous. I've lived with the memory of his smile for 40 years. Don't underestimate him." After I hung up, I sat staring at my notes. A new theory was forming, one that terrified me more than anything I'd considered so far. What if the convergence wasn't just about the murders? What if it was about cycles, about people being pulled into the temporal loop? Crowley had said he'd fallen through in 1932, been trapped since then. What if others had fallen through too? What if Mike Torres had been investigating in 1972, discovered the truth, and somehow gotten trapped in the loop? What if I was next? I drove to the station that night, after hours. Used my key to access the archives room and pulled every file related to Mike Torres. There wasn't much. His career had been cut short by his death. But I found his case notes from the 1972 Sarah Mitchell investigation. His handwriting was shaky in the final entries, dated just days before his death. Something wrong with rest area. Multiple witnesses report seeing things from different time periods. Need to investigate further. Have found evidence of pattern going back decades. Meeting with surviving witnesses tomorrow night. Will report findings after. He'd never made that report. He died the next day. I went through the rest of his notes and found something that made my blood run cold. A sketch, hastily drawn, of the rest area building. He'd marked the 4 doors and written beside them, 4 portals, 4 time periods. Need to observe during next convergence, October 15th, 1992. Mike Torres had known. He'd figured it out 20 years before me. And he'd marked October 15th, 1992 as the next convergence date. That was last week, the night I'd walked through the doors. But Mike was dead. He'd died in 1972. So how could he have known about 1992? Unless he hadn't died. Unless he'd fallen through time, just like Crowley. Unless he was trapped somewhere in the loop, trying to warn people, trying to stop the murders. I thought about the 1950s patrol car Earl Thompson had seen in 1972. The young officer who looked scared, whose uniform wasn't quite right. What if that had been someone from 1992, someone who'd fallen through during the convergence, someone trying to stop what was happening? What if it would be me? The thought was paralyzing. If I went back to Little America during the next convergence in 2012, would I fall through like the others? Would I become trapped, doomed to exist in a loop, watching the murders happen over and over, unable to stop them? But if I didn't go back, if I didn't try, how many more people would die? The 2012 victim was already marked, already chosen. I'd seen the body, and 20 years after that, in 2032, there would be another. And another in 2052. On and on, forever. Unless someone stopped it. My phone rang. Lisa. Danny, where are you? You promised you'd be home for dinner. I'm sorry, something came up at the station. I'll be home soon. Are you okay? You sound strange. I'm fine. Just working through something. I love you, Lisa. Tell Amy I love her too. Danny, you're scaring me. I'm fine. I promise. I'll be home in an hour. I hung up and looked at Mike Torres's notes one more time. Then I made a decision. I couldn't wait 20 years. I couldn't let Crowley keep killing. And I couldn't let anyone else fall through into his trap. I had to go back to Little America. Not during the convergence, not when the doors were open. But now, I had to find a way to end this, even if it meant becoming part of the loop myself. I drove out to the rest area, arriving just before midnight. The parking lot was empty except for one semi-truck. The building looked normal, innocuous, just another rest stop on a lonely highway. But I knew better now. I knew what it really was. A trap, a temporal snare that had been catching people for over a century. I tried each door, hoping against hope that maybe, just maybe, they would open to other times. But they didn't. Just 4 doors to the same rest area, the same moment, the same reality. I sat down on a bench inside and waited. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I felt like something was about to happen. At 11:47 p.m., exactly 1 week after the convergence, I felt it, that prickling sensation. The air began to shimmer. One of the doors opened on its own. Not the door I'd come through, but the first door, the 1950s door. Through the doorway, I could see yellow light, smell cigarette smoke, hear music from decades past, and standing in that doorway, looking directly at me, was James Crowley. "Officer Hayes, I was hoping you'd come back. We have so much to discuss, and I have a proposition for you." He stepped aside, gesturing into the 1950s rest area. "Come with me. Let me show you what's really happening here. Let me show you why the murders don't matter, why nothing matters except surviving the loop." I stood up, hand on my weapon. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Then I'll tell you from here. That Mike Torres you've been reading about, he's not dead. He's here in the loop. Has been since 1972, and he wants to talk to you. He has a message about what's coming in 2012. You're lying. Am I? Why don't you come through the door and find out, or are you afraid? Afraid that once you step through, you'll never make it back? That you'll become like me, like Mike, like all the others who've fallen through?" My radio crackled. Sarah Chen's voice. "Daniel, I'm at your house. Lisa called, said you weren't home. Where are you?" I looked at the radio, then back at Crowley. "Time to choose, officer. Your life, your family, your linear existence, or the truth can't have both." The door began to close. I made my choice. I ran through it. The transition was like falling through ice. That sudden shock of cold, the disorientation of not knowing which way was up. For a moment, I was everywhere and nowhere, experiencing every second of my life simultaneously. Birth, childhood, first day at the academy, meeting Lisa, holding Amy for the first time, and my death, dozens of different deaths depending on choices I hadn't made yet. Then I was standing in the 1950s rest area, breathing hard, my uniform soaked with cold sweat. Crowley was beside me, looking amused. First time is always the hardest. Your mind trying to process existing in multiple states at once. It gets easier. "Where's Mike Torres? You said he was here. He is. But you need to understand something first, Officer Hayes. Time doesn't work here the way it does out there. In here, in the between, past and future exist simultaneously. Mike Torres is investigating the 1972 murder right now. He's also dying in a hit and run. He's also trying to warn you in 1992. All happening at once. That's impossible. You're standing in 1952, having come from 1992, talking about events in 1972 and 2012. What about any of this is possible?" Crowley walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. "Come here." "Look." I approached cautiously. Through the window, I could see the parking lot, but it was wrong. There were multiple versions of it overlapping like a bad double exposure. I could see vintage 1950s cars parked next to modern vehicles, next to cars that looked futuristic. People walked through the lot, passing through each other like ghosts. "This is what the rest area really is," Crowley said. "All moments existing together. The convergence on October 15th every 20 years just makes it easier to navigate, easier to cross between the layers. But the layers are always here, always accessible if you know how. How did this happen? How did this place become like this?" The land was special long before the rest area was built. The native tribes knew it, called it a place where the spirits of all times gathered. When Four Corners Station was built in the 1800s, when the highway came through, when the rest stop was constructed, Each addition strengthened the effect. 4 roads, 4 entrances, 4 cardinal directions. It created a perfect nexus. And you're trapped here. We're trapped here, he corrected. You came through the door. You're in the loop now, just like Mike Torres, just like dozens of others over the years. I can leave. I came through a door. I can go back through it. Crowley smiled that disturbing smile. Try. I turned and ran back to the door I'd entered through, but when I opened it, I didn't see the 1992 rest area. I saw another time period, one I didn't recognize. The architecture was different, older, more primitive. This wasn't any of the 4 main timelines. This was something else. I tried another door, same thing. A different time, but not my present. I tried all 4 doors, and each one opened to a different moment, but none of them were my 1992. You're starting to understand, Crowley said. Once you're in the loop, getting back to your exact moment is nearly impossible. The Nexus has thousands of moments, millions of variations. Your 1992 is just one thread in an infinite tapestry. You could search for years and never find the exact moment you left. I felt panic rising. Lisa, Amy, I have to get back to them. And you might. Eventually, but by the time you do, how much time will have passed for them? Days, years, decades. Time is fluid here. You could be gone for what feels like hours and return to find everyone you knew is dead. I slid down the wall, the full weight of my mistake crushing me. I'd run through that door without thinking, and now I was trapped. Why did you bring me here? What do you want? Crowley sat down across from me. I want you to understand. I want someone to finally understand what it's like. Do you know what I was before this? A salesman, traveling through Wyoming, stopped at that gas station for fuel. Made a wrong turn through a door that shouldn't have opened, and my life ended. Or maybe it never ended. I've been here for 60 years, experiencing every moment of those 60 years simultaneously. I've lived through 1900 32,000s of times. I've seen 1952 and 1972 and 1992 and beyond, all happening at once. It's maddening. So you kill people to stay sane? I kill people to stay anchored. Without the anchors, without the deaths, I dissolve completely into the between. I become pure consciousness spread across infinite moments, unable to interact with anything. The deaths create focal points, moments of such intense emotion and finality that they act as hooks. They keep me tethered to specific times. That doesn't make it right. Right? Crowley laughed. I'm beyond right and wrong, Officer Hayes. I'm beyond human. I've seen the beginning and the end of the universe. I've watched civilizations rise and fall. I've experienced every possible outcome of every possible choice. Morality is meaningless when you exist outside of linear time. Then why am I here? Why show me this? Because you're different. You figured it out. You saw the pattern. And I'm tired, Officer Hayes, so tired. I've been playing this game for so long and I'm ready for it to end. What are you saying? I'm saying I want out. I want to stop existing, but I can't do it alone. The loop won't let me die. Every time I try, I just wake up in another moment, still trapped. But you're new to the loop. You still have momentum. You could push me out if you knew how. Before I could respond, a door opened, and another man walked in. He wore a Wyoming Highway Patrol uniform, vintage 1970s. It took me a moment to recognize him from the old photograph I'd seen in the files. Mike Torres. He looked at me with weary recognition. Daniel Hayes. I've been trying to reach you for 20 years. Well, 20 years in your timeline. For me, it's been both an instant and an eternity. I stood up. You're alive. You didn't die in the hit and run. I did, and I didn't. The accident happened, but instead of dying, I fell through. Been stuck here ever since, trying to figure out how to stop this. He glared at Crowley. And trying to stop him. I've told Officer Hayes everything, Crowley said. About the loop, about the anchors. He understands now. He's a murderer, Daniel. Don't listen to anything he says. He's not trying to help you. He's trying to trap you further. I'm trying to free us all, Crowley said calmly. You, me, the dozens of others stuck in this loop. But it requires sacrifice. It requires someone to sever the connection permanently. Mike stepped closer to me. Daniel, listen carefully. There is a way out. The convergence on October 15th isn't just when the doors are easiest to cross. It's when the loop is most vulnerable. During the convergence, all the timelines align perfectly. If you can disrupt that alignment, break the synchronization, the loop collapses. What happens to everyone in the loop if it collapses? Mike's expression darkened. We cease to exist, all of us. Everyone who's ever fallen through will be erased as if we never entered the loop at all. But the timeline outside continues, Crowley added. The murders, the disappearances, everything that happened because of the loop, it all gets reset. The victims come back. The timeline repairs itself. I looked between them. So, to save the victims, to stop the murders, I have to sacrifice everyone who's trapped in the loop? Including yourself, Mike said quietly, because you're in it now. If you collapse the loop, you'll cease to exist, too. Lisa and Amy will never remember you came to the rest area that night. Their timeline will diverge from the moment you ran through that door. In their reality, you'll have gone home, lived your life, never fallen through. But I won't remember them. I won't exist to remember anything. No, Crowley said. You'll be unmade. A life unlived. Is that better or worse than being trapped here forever? I can't decide. I thought about Lisa, about Amy, about the life I'd left behind. If I did nothing, I'd be trapped here, experiencing every moment simultaneously, slowly going mad, like Crowley. Eventually, I'd become like him, willing to kill just to maintain some semblance of anchored existence. But if I collapsed the loop, I'd cease to exist. My family would go on without me, but they'd never know what I'd sacrificed. They'd never know I'd saved them from a future where I was missing, where they spent years wondering what happened to me. How do I collapse the loop? Mike pulled out a folded paper from his pocket, covered in equations and diagrams. I've been working on this for years. The loop is maintained by the 4 focal points, the 4 doors. They act as stabilizers, keeping the temporal structure intact. During the convergence, when all timelines align, the 4 doors create a perfect square of synchronization. If you can disrupt that square, introduce asymmetry, the structure collapses. How do I do that? You destroy one of the doors. Physically destroy it during the convergence. The building itself is part of the mechanism. Remove one anchor point, and the entire structure fails. When's the next convergence? October 15th, 2012. 20 years from your 1992. That's 20 years away. I'll be in my late 40s by then. Mike shook his head. You don't understand how time works in the loop. You can navigate to 2012 right now. It's already happening, has always been happening. All moments exist simultaneously here. You just need to find the right door during the convergence. But if I go to 2012 and destroy a door, won't that change the timeline? Won't that mean the 1952 and 1972 and 1992 murders never get solved? They don't need to be solved, Crowley said. If you collapse the loop, those murders never happen. The victims are restored to their timelines, alive. Everything that happened because of the loop is erased, including everyone trapped in it. Including us, Mike confirmed. I've made my peace with it, Daniel. I've been dead since 1972 anyway. This is just a delayed ending. But it's worth it to save all those people, to prevent future deaths. I looked at Crowley. What about you? You said you wanted out. Why don't you destroy the door yourself? Because I'm fully integrated into the loop now. I can't act against it. The moment I try, I'm shunted to a different time. You're new, still mostly tied to your original moment. You have agency I don't have anymore. That's why I brought you in. That's why I've been waiting for someone like you. You've been waiting to die. I've been waiting to stop, he corrected. There's a difference. Death implies an ending. I can't die while I'm in the loop. But if the loop ceases to exist, then I finally stop. No more infinite moments, no more experiencing everything at once, just nothing. Peace. I sat down, trying to process everything. Mike sat beside me. I know this is a lot, he said gently, but we don't have much time. Well, we have infinite time, but also no time. It's complicated. The point is, you need to make a decision. Stay in the loop and eventually become like Crowley, or collapse it and save everyone except those of us already trapped. What about my family? They'll be fine. Better than fine. In the corrected timeline, you never came to the rest area. You went home that night. You lived your life with them. They'll never know any of this happened. But I won't be there. The me that went home, that's a different version. I'll be erased. Yes, but isn't that better than being stuck here? At least they'll have a version of you, a version that never got trapped, never went mad, never became something terrible. I thought about Amy, about watching her grow up, about Lisa, about growing old together. If I stayed in the loop, I'd lose all of that. I'd become a monster, killing to maintain my existence. But if I collapsed the loop, a different version of me would have all those experiences. A version that made the right choice that night, that went home instead of running through the door. It wasn't really a choice at all. Okay, I'll do it. How do I get to the 2012 convergence? Mike stood up, pulling me with him. I'll show you. But Daniel, you need to know something. Once you're at the convergence, once you start trying to destroy the door, Crowley will try to stop you. His survival instinct will kick in. He wants to stop existing, but every fiber of his being will fight to prevent it. Crowley nodded. He's right. I've tried before, with others who fell through. At the last moment, I always stop them. I can't help it. The loop has been my prison for so long it's become my identity. Letting it end means letting myself end, and that's harder than you'd think. So, what do I do? You do what needs to be done, Mike said. No matter what he says, no matter how he tries to stop you, you destroy that door, even if it means destroying him in the process. We walked to the fourth door, the one that opened to 2012. Mike placed his hand on the handle. One more thing. When you destroy the door, the collapse happens instantly. You won't have time to say goodbye, won't have time to think. One moment you exist, the next you don't. Are you ready for that? I thought about Lisa's smile, about Amy's laugh, about all the moments I'd miss, all the memories I'd never make. But I also thought about the victims, about the people who'd died because of this place, about future victims who'd never have a chance if I didn't act. I'm ready. Mike opened the door. Beyond it, I could see the 2012 rest area. Sleek, modern, full of digital displays and LED lights. And there, parked in the lot, was the silver electric car with the body inside, the victim I'd seen during my first night at the Convergence. "This is it," Mike said. October 15th, 2012, 11:47 p.m. The Convergence is happening right now, in all 4 timelines simultaneously. You need to get to the main structural support for the first door and damage it severely. The building will start to collapse and the loop will fail. You'll have maybe 30 seconds before Crowley realizes what you're doing and tries to stop you. What about you? I'll try to hold him off. Give you as much time as I can. Mike extended his hand. It's been an honor, Daniel. Even if we'll both cease to exist, even if nobody will remember this, I want you to know you're doing the right thing. I shook his hand. Thank you. For everything. For being a good cop, even when trapped in hell. You too, kid. Now go. End this. I stepped through the door into 2012, into a world 20 years ahead of my own time. The rest area was crowded with people, travelers who had no idea they were standing at the nexus of a temporal anomaly. I could see the other versions of the rest area overlapping, could see ghostly figures from 1952 and 1972 and 1992 moving through the space. The Convergence was in full effect. I ran to the first door, the 1950s entrance, and looked at its frame. The structural support was part of the original building, heavy steel girders that held up this section of the roof. I'd need tools, something to damage it severely enough to cause a collapse. A maintenance closet. Every rest area had one. I found it near the restrooms, forced the lock and grabbed a fire axe. As I ran back to the first door, I saw Crowley materialize in front of me. He looked different now, less composed. His eyes were wild, desperate. "Don't do this, Daniel. Please. There has to be another way. You told me you wanted this. You said you wanted to stop existing. I thought I did. But now that it's here, now that it's real, I'm not ready. I'm scared. I don't want to disappear. Please, there must be another option." Behind him, I saw Mike Torres fighting with another figure, someone else from the loop, trying to hold them back. "I'm sorry," I said, and raised the axe. Crowley lunged at me, but I swung first, hitting the steel girder with all my strength. The metal dented, but didn't break. I swung again. Each impact sent vibrations through the building. People were screaming now, running for the exits, thinking it was an earthquake or a structural failure. Crowley grabbed the axe, trying to wrestle it from me. We struggled, both knowing that in moments this would all be over. "Please," he begged, "I don't want to stop existing." "I don't want to be nothing. You've existed too long already. Let them go. Let all of us go." I wrenched the axe free and brought it down on the girder one final time. The metal screamed, then gave way. The doorframe buckled, and I could feel the loop beginning to destabilize. The 4 doors started to flicker, showing different times in rapid succession. 1952, 1972, 1992, 2012, and hundreds of other moments all flashing by. The synchronization was breaking. Crowley fell to his knees. Oh God, I can feel it. I'm coming undone. I'm experiencing my birth and my death simultaneously. I'm everywhere and nowhere. He vanished. Not all at once, but gradually, fading away like a photograph left in the sun. Within seconds, he was gone completely. Mike Torres appeared beside me. He was fading too, becoming translucent. "It's working," he said, his voice distant. "The loop is collapsing. Daniel, I'm remembering things that never happened. I'm remembering going home in 1972. I'm remembering growing old. Those memories feel as real as these ones. The timeline is rewriting itself. I'm remembering going home too, I said, looking down at my own fading hands. I'm remembering Lisa and Amy. I'm remembering Amy's graduation, her wedding, things that haven't happened yet but somehow have happened. Multiple timelines collapsing into one, Mike said. The corrected timeline, where none of us fell through. The building was shaking violently now, the roof beginning to cave in. People had evacuated, running to their cars, speeding away from the disintegrating rest area. Thank you, Mike said, for finishing what I couldn't. Thank you for training me. In the timeline where you lived, where you weren't trapped here, did you train me in that one too? Mike smiled as he faded away. I don't know, but I like to think I did. I like to think I helped make you the cop you became. Then he was gone. I stood alone in the collapsing rest area, feeling myself being unmade. It wasn't painful, not exactly. It was like falling asleep, like the moment between waking and dreaming where you're not quite sure what's real anymore. I could see my life branching into two streams. In one, I ran through that door and ended up here, destroying the loop, ceasing to exist. In the other, I turned around at the last second, didn't go through the door, went home to Lisa and Amy, lived my life, never knew any of this happened. Both felt equally real and equally unreal. The rest area roof came down, steel and concrete falling around me, but I couldn't feel it. I was already halfway between existing and not existing. My last thought, before I stopped being, was of Amy's laugh. And then I was nothing. I woke up in my patrol car, parked outside Little America Rest Area. The clock on my dashboard read 11:52 p.m., October 15th, 1992. For a moment, I couldn't remember why I was there. Then it came flooding back, memories layered on top of memories like overlapping photographs. I remembered running through the door, remembered destroying the loop, remembered ceasing to exist. But I also remembered not running through the door, remembered turning around at the last second, remembered driving home to Lisa and Amy. Which memory was real? I got out of the car and looked at the rest area building. It stood solid and normal, 4 doors clearly visible. Nothing collapsed, nothing destroyed. It was as if nothing had happened, but something felt different. The air didn't have that prickling sensation I'd felt before. The doors looked like regular doors, no shimmer of temporal energy, no suggestion of other times beyond them. I walked to the first door and looked through the glass. Just a normal rest area interior, 1992, beige walls and tile floors. I tried the handle. It opened to the same space, same time. No 1950s vintage fixtures, no yellow lights. I checked all 4 doors. They all opened to the same rest area, the same moment. The loop was gone. My radio crackled. Sarah Chen's voice. "Daniel, are you out there? Lisa called the station, said you hadn't come home. Everything okay?" I keyed the radio. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just doing a final sweep of Little America. Heading home now." "Copy that. Have a good night." I stood there for a moment longer, trying to reconcile my 2 sets of memories. In one version, I'd spent what felt like days trapped in the temporal loop, learning about the murders, meeting Mike Torres and James Crowley, ultimately destroying everything. In the other version, I'd simply done a routine check of the rest area and gone home. Both felt completely real. I got back in my patrol car and started driving toward Rollins. As I drove, I pulled out my phone and called the station. "Hey, can you pull a file for me? Officer Mike Torres died in 1972. I need to see his service record." There was a pause. Daniel, we don't have anyone by that name in our database. You sure about that spelling? Mike Torres, Torres, Highway Patrol, killed in a hit-and-run in 1972. I'm looking at our historical records. No Mike Torres, no hit-and-run in 1972 involving an officer. I felt a chill. What about unsolved murders? Check for Sarah Mitchell, 1972, and any Jane Doe homicides from 1952. More typing. Negative on both. We've got no unsolved murders at Little America. In fact, that rest area has a completely clean record. No major incidents at all. Thanks, I must be misremembering something. But I wasn't misremembering. The loop had collapsed, and the timeline had been corrected. The murders never happened. Mike Torres never investigated them, never fell through, never died. He'd lived his life, retired peacefully, probably passed away from old age by now. And James Crowley, he'd never been trapped. He'd made it home in 1932, lived his life. Was long dead by 1992. The victims were alive. The killers erased. The timeline repaired. But I remembered. Somehow, I remembered both versions of reality. When I got home, Lisa was waiting up for me, looking worried. "Where were you? You said you'd be home hours ago." I looked at her, this woman I loved, trying to figure out which version of tonight she remembered. I stopped at Little America. Thought I saw something unusual, but it turned out to be nothing. She studied my face. "Are you okay? You look like you've been through something." "Just a long shift. I'm fine." She hugged me, and I held her tight. Grateful beyond words that I'd made it back. Or had I? Was I the version that went through the door and destroyed the loop? Or was I the version that turned around and came home? I went upstairs to check on Amy. She was asleep, her little face peaceful, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. I stood there watching her breathe, remembering the version of her life where I disappeared, where she grew up without a father. That didn't happen now. Wouldn't happen. I was here. But I also remembered not being here. I remembered being unmade, ceasing to exist. Over the next few weeks, I tried to move on, to accept that whatever had happened, it was over. The rest area was normal. The loop was gone. I'd done what needed to be done, except I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Small things seemed off. My training officer's name was listed as Richard Martinez, but I had vague memories of it being Mike Torres. Sarah Chen mentioned a case from last month that I had no memory of, but she insisted I'd been there. Lisa talked about a vacation we'd taken in 1990, but I couldn't remember it at all. It was like I was living in a timeline that was close to mine but not quite exact, like I'd been inserted into a reality that wasn't the one I'd left. 1 month after that night at Little America, I received a package at the station. No return address, just my name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a photograph. It showed the Little America rest area, but not as I knew it. This was older, maybe from the 1950s based on the cars in the lot, and standing in front of the building were 4 people. A woman in a modest dress, a trucker in work clothes, a man in a dark coat, and a highway patrol officer in a vintage uniform. I looked closer at the officer. It was Mike Torres. I recognized him from the old photos I'd seen before the timeline changed. And standing beside him, partially visible in the background, was me, in my 1992 State Trooper uniform, clear as day, existing in a 1950s photograph. I flipped the photo over. On the back, written in that same unfamiliar handwriting, was a message. The loop never truly closes. You can't destroy what exists outside of time. You only moved it. Check the new rest area. Mile marker 72, October 15th, 2012. We'll be waiting. My hands started shaking. I grabbed my jacket and drove immediately to I-80, heading west. Mile marker 72 was just a few miles from where Little America had been. When I arrived, I found it. A brand new rest area, still under construction. The sign out front read, Four Corners Rest Area. Opening October 2012. Four Corners. The same name as the original site from the 1800s. I got out and approached the construction site. The building was nearly complete, and I counted the entrances. 4 doors, 2 on each side, exactly like Little America. The loop hadn't been destroyed, it had just moved. Or maybe there had always been multiple sites, multiple nexus points. Maybe collapsing one loop had just shifted the convergence to another location. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Hello? That voice, James Crowley's voice, but different somehow. Younger. Officer Hayes. Thank you for moving the loop. The new location is much better, more isolated, easier to work in. See you in 2012. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there in the afternoon sun, looking at the nearly completed rest area, understanding, finally, what had really happened. I hadn't destroyed the loop. I'd just reorganized it. The deaths would still happen. The convergence would still occur. I'd simply delayed it by 20 years and moved it 4 miles down the road. Crowley was still out there, still trapped, still killing. He'd played me, convinced me I was ending it when really I was just giving him a fresh start, a new hunting ground. But he'd made one mistake. He'd told me where and when the next convergence would be. October 15th, 2012. Four Corners Rest Area, mile marker 72. I had 20 years to prepare, 20 years to figure out how to really destroy the loop, not just move it. 20 years to find a way to save the victims without erasing myself from existence. I drove home that night with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. This wasn't over. The loop might be eternal, might exist outside of time itself, but I was going to find a way to end it. For Mike Torres, who'd tried and failed in 1972, for all the victims across decades, for my family, so they'd never have to live in a world where I disappeared into a temporal anomaly. I had 20 years. I intended to use them well. The years passed quickly. Too quickly. I watched Amy grow up, attended her school events, taught her to drive. Lisa and I worked through our rough patch, grew closer. I made detective, then sergeant. Life moved forward, linear and normal. But I never forgot about Four Corners. Every October 15th, I'd drive out to mile marker 72 and watch the construction progress. The rest area opened in October 2010, 2 years before the convergence. It looked exactly like Little America had. 4 doors, same layout, same design. I researched temporal mechanics, quantum physics, anything that might help me understand how to truly end the loop. I contacted physicists, paranormal researchers, anyone who might have insights. Most thought I was crazy. A few listened, but had no answers. By 2012, I was 48 years old. Amy was in college. Lisa had started her own business. I'd lived a good life, a full life. But October 15th, 2012 was approaching, and I still didn't have a solution. The night before the convergence, I sat down with Lisa and told her everything. About the first night at Little America, about the loop, about Crowley and Mike Torres and the murders that had happened and been erased, about the 20 years I'd spent preparing for tomorrow. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she took my hand. "I believe you," she said simply. "I've always known something happened that night. You came back different. Not bad different, but changed, like you'd lived through something profound and couldn't talk about it. I'm going to the Convergence tomorrow night. I'm going to try to end this for real. I know, and I'm going with you. Lisa, no, it's too dangerous. If I fail, if I get trapped in the loop, then we get trapped together. Danny, I'm not letting you face this alone. Whatever happens, we face it as a family. Amy is an adult now. She knows you've been working on something for her whole life, something important. She wanted to come too, but I convinced her to stay home. Someone needs to remember us if this goes wrong. I tried to argue, but I knew Lisa well enough to know she'd made up her mind. We spent that night holding each other, not sleeping, just being together. October 15th, 2012, 11 p.m. Lisa and I drove to Four Corners Rest Area. The parking lot was empty except for a few semi-trucks. The building looked normal, innocuous, but I could feel it, that prickling sensation I remembered from 20 years ago. The convergence was beginning. We got out of the car and approached the building. As we got closer, I could see it happening. The four doors starting to glow with different lights, yellow, fluorescent, mercury vapor, LED. 4 time periods, 4 moments converging. You're sure about this? I asked Lisa. I've never been more sure of anything. We walked to the first door together. Through the glass, I could see the 1950s interior, and standing there looking directly at us was James Crowley. He looked exactly the same as he had 20 years ago. Hadn't aged a day, of course. He smiled that disturbing smile and gestured for us to enter. We opened the door and stepped through together. The transition was just as disorienting as I remembered, but Lisa's hand in mine kept me grounded. When the world solidified around us, we were standing in the 1950s rest area. Crowley approached slowly. Officer Hayes, you came back, and you brought your wife. How touching. I came to finish this, to really end it this time. You can't end what's eternal, officer. You learned that last time. You can move it, reorganize it, delay it, but you can't destroy it. There has to be a way. There is, said a voice behind us. I turned to see an elderly man walking out of one of the restrooms. He looked to be in his 70s, gray hair, weathered face, but his eyes were sharp, intelligent. It took me a moment to recognize him. Mike Torres, he nodded. The ME from the corrected timeline, the one who never fell through in 1972. I've been investigating this place for 40 years, Daniel. Ever since I had a strange dream about a rest area where time didn't work right. The dream was so vivid, so specific. I knew it had to mean something. You remember? You remember the other timeline? Not consciously, but something in me knows. Some part of me that exists outside the corrected timeline kept the memory. I've spent my life studying temporal mechanics, trying to understand what I couldn't consciously remember, and I finally figured it out. He pulled out a device from his bag, something that looked like a modified radar gun with additional circuits and components attached. The loop exists because the 4 doors create a stable standing wave in the temporal field. You tried to destroy it by removing one door, but the wave simply reformed at a new location. To truly end it, you don't destroy the structure. You reverse the wave. How? By creating a temporal inversion at the exact moment of convergence. All 4 timelines aligned, then forced backward. The loop doesn't collapse, it inverts, turning inside out. Everything that happened inside the loop gets expelled, pushed back into their original timelines. Crowley was backing away. No, it would mean everyone trapped in the loop gets returned to the moment they fell through, Mike said. But they'd be returned with their memories intact. You, James Crowley, would be sent back to 1932, but you'd remember these 80 years. You'd be free to live your life, but you'd never fall through in the first place. The paradox would tear me apart. No, Mike said firmly. That's the beauty of inversion. Paradoxes resolve themselves. You'd exist in both states simultaneously until you made a different choice. A choice not to go through that door in 1932. And then the timeline would solidify with you never having been trapped. I looked at Mike, understanding dawning. Everyone gets saved. The victims, the people trapped in the loop, everyone. Everyone except those of us who were never in the loop, Mike said quietly. The corrected timeline versions, like me. We'd cease to exist because we only existed as a result of the loop's influence. When the loop inverts, we'll never have existed at all. Mike, it's okay, Daniel. I've had a good life, a full life. But I've always felt like I was living on borrowed time, like I was a ghost in someone else's existence. This is what I was meant to do, and the loop for real. Give everyone their lives back. Lisa squeezed my hand. What about us? Daniel and me? You were never in the loop, Mike said. You turned around that night in 1992, went home. This you, the you standing here now, is from the corrected timeline. When the inversion happens, you'll simply be standing in a rest area in 2012, wondering why you drove here. But you'll be okay. You'll go home to Amy. You'll live your lives. But I won't remember any of this. No, none of this will have happened. The loop will have never existed. James Crowley will have gone home in 1932. The victims will have lived. The convergences will have never occurred. It'll just be a rest area, nothing more. Crowley was on his knees now. Please, I don't want to go back. I don't want to live through 1932 again, knowing what I know. It'll drive me insane. You'll make different choices, Mike said. You'll live your life. That's more than your victims got. He aimed the device at the center of the rest area, at the point where all 4 doors intersected. Daniel, Lisa, you need to leave, now. When this goes off, it'll affect everyone in the loop. You're from the corrected timeline, so you should be fine, but I can't guarantee it. Please, go home. Lisa was already pulling me toward the exit. Come on, Danny. But I stopped. Mike, what about you? You're from the corrected timeline, too. You'll cease to exist. I know, but I'm old, Daniel. I've lived my life. You're still young. You have decades ahead of you. Go home to your family. Mike, that's an order, Officer Hayes. He smiled. Now get out of here. Lisa and I ran for the exit, bursting through the door back into 2012. We kept running until we reached our car, and I looked back at the rest area. Through the windows, I could see a brilliant blue-white light building inside, growing brighter and brighter. The building started to shake, not collapsing like last time, but vibrating, oscillating. The 4 doors flickering through different time periods so fast they became a blur. Then there was a pulse, a wave of energy that I felt more than saw, radiating outward from the rest area. It passed through me like a cold breeze, and for just an instant I saw everything. I saw James Crowley in 1932, pulling up to Four Corners Station, starting to walk toward a door that glowed strangely, then stopping, getting back in his car, driving away, living his life. I saw all the victims alive, making different choices, never stopping at the rest area at the wrong moment, going on to live full lives. I saw Mike Torres, dozens of versions of him, all the timelines collapsing into one where he lived, worked, retired, died peacefully in his sleep. And I saw myself in 1992, standing at that door, hand on the handle, then pulling back, going home, living my life with Lisa and Amy. Then it was over. The pulse faded. The rest area stood quiet and normal, all 4 doors showing the same interior, the same time. Lisa and I stood there in the parking lot, not quite sure what we were doing there. "Danny? Why are we here?" I looked at her, trying to remember. I don't know. I thought there was something I needed to check, something about this rest area. At midnight? On our anniversary. I looked at my watch. October 15th, 2012. Our 21st anniversary. We'd gone out to dinner, had a wonderful evening, and then I'd insisted we drive here. But I couldn't remember why. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Let's go home." We got in the car and drove back to Rollins. The whole way, I felt like I was forgetting something important, something profound. But every time I tried to grasp it, it slipped away. When we got home, Amy was there, visiting for the weekend from college. She looked at us strangely. "Did you guys figure out what Dad was worried about?" "With the rest area? What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "Dad's been talking about that Four Corners place for years, like he was expecting something to happen there. I thought maybe tonight was significant. I'd been worried about it. I remembered that now, vaguely, but I couldn't remember why. It was just a rest area, nothing special about it." "False alarm," I said. "Everything's fine." That night, lying in bed next to Lisa, I had the strangest feeling. Like I'd lived through something incredible, something impossible. Like I'd made a choice that saved countless lives, but I couldn't remember what it was. I got up and went to my study. In the bottom drawer of my desk, I found a file folder I didn't remember creating. Inside were newspaper clippings about disappearances, notes about temporal anomalies, a photograph from the 1950s showing people at a rest area. I looked at the photograph closely. There was a highway patrol officer in it, and for just a moment he looked familiar. Like someone I'd known once, someone important. But the moment passed, and he was just a stranger in an old photograph. I put the folder back and went to bed, and for the first time in 20 years, I slept deeply, dreamlessly. Somewhere, in a reality that no longer existed, a temporal loop had been inverted, and everyone had been saved. Mike Torres had sacrificed his existence to undo the trap. James Crowley had lived his life and died of old age decades ago, never becoming a monster. The victims had all lived, loved, grown old, and I had been there, had played a crucial role, had destroyed the loop twice, once by collapsing it, once by helping Mike invert it. But I didn't remember any of it. None of us did. The timeline had been corrected so thoroughly that it was as if it had never been broken in the first place. I was just a Wyoming State Trooper who'd lived a good life, had a wonderful family, and sometimes had strange dreams about a rest area where time didn't work right. Just dreams. Nothing more. Except sometimes when I drove past Four Corners Rest Area on I-80, I'd feel a chill. And I'd remember a name, Mike Torres. And I'd wonder why that name felt so important, why it felt like I owed someone by that name everything. But the feeling would pass, and I'd keep driving, and life would go on, linear and normal and beautifully ordinary, just the way it should be, just the way it had always been. And on October 15th each year, I'd find myself driving to that rest area without quite knowing why, sitting in the parking lot looking at those 4 doors, feeling like I was keeping a vigil for something I couldn't remember, a promise to someone who'd never existed, a debt to a man who'd saved my life by erasing his own. Mike Torres. The name echoed in my mind like a half-remembered dream. Thank you, I'd think, not knowing who I was thanking or why. And somewhere, in the space between moments and the gap between what was and what could have been, I'd swear I could hear a response. "You're welcome, Daniel. Now go home to your family." And I would, every time.